The story begins with a strange bright light flying towards a farm. It flies across the field and takes different turns. After traveling through the field, the light disappears. The next morning, bright sunlight illuminates the farm, and the farm owner starts banging the alarm bell to alert his sons. The farm owner has 3 sons, and the youngest of them is John, who is known as a fool in their village. On the way to respond to his father, John falls on the ground and catches a hedgehog instead of running to his father. Meanwhile, the other 2 brothers arrive to their father, and their father shows them the destroyed farm. The farm has a strange burnt pattern on its crops, which enrages the father. He demands an answer, but none of the sons are aware of who did this to their farm. The farm owner tells his sons to keep an eye on the farm that night, and at the same time John arrives there. John is very naive in nature, so his brother tricks him and asks him to be on guard instead. John agrees, and his brothers cleverly get out of the responsibility. At night, John gets ready to guard the farm alone. He suddenly hears a strange sound from the farm. He quickly gets up and looks behind. To his surprise, there is a huge white horse standing behind him. John has never seen such a majestic and huge horse. He quickly climbs on the watchtower to get a better look at the horse. After the horse tries to retrieve, John quickly ties a rope around it. The horse runs away, and John quickly grabs the rope tied to the horse, causing him to get dragged by the horse. After some distance, the horse stumbles on something in the farm and trips, landing straight in a mud puddle. The horse gets stuck inside the puddle, and John helps the horse to get out. After the horse is safe, John walks towards it and sees that the horse has started to cry. John quickly consoles the horse and takes a promise from it that the horse won't ever come back to the farm. The horse agrees, and they sit under the bright moonlight. John is amazed by the beauty this horse holds and admires it. The next day, John is relieved that the horse is gone, but he is startled when he hears another strange sound coming from the farm shed. He walks in and finds 2 new horses standing there. John starts to wonder where these horses are from when a voice behind him tells John that these horses are a gift for him. John looks back and sees a small horse walking towards him. The horse introduces himself as Foal and tells John that he is the son of the horse John saved last night. Foal tells John that his mother was very pleased with John saving her life, which is why she sent such an exquisite pair of horses as a gift for him. Just as they are talking, John hears his father calling him out and quickly locks the door of the shed. He starts to panic, but Foal gives him the idea to ride him, as Foal also has mysterious powers. John sits on Foal, and they travel to a distant location with the speed of light. John gets shocked after seeing Foal's abilities. After reaching a distant place, Foal whistles loudly. The whistles give the 2 black horses in John's shed the command to follow Foal. They quickly run after Foal's whistle and come to John. John decides that he is going to sell these exquisite horses to the market and earn money. Foal accompanies John and goes to the market. Upon his arrival, everyone stares at the majestic horses with awe, as this is the first time they have seen such beautiful horses. Everyone starts bidding on the horse, which makes John feel very proud and mighty. Foal tells John to sell these horses to an old man sitting in the market, but John comes up with another brilliant idea, to sell these horses to his king. Foal forbids him from doing it, but John ends up offering them to the king. The king looks at the horses and gets interested in them. However, the king's advisor gives the king the idea that he believes the horses John possesses are stolen horses. The king smirks at John and takes the horses from him without paying him a single penny. John steps up and asks for his payment, but the king silently leaves John there. John gets heartbroken and stares at the ground with defeat. Foal starts scolding John that he should have sold the horse to the old man as Foal suggested, but John didn't listen to him. Foal looks at John and sees that John is very sad, so he decides to not say anything bad to him anymore. Foal decides to fix the mess John has made and whistles again. Within the next seconds, the 2 horses run back to John, but since these 2 horses were attached to the king's carriage, the carriage flies in the air after losing balance. It stays in the air for a split second while John looks at the scene with a gaping expression as the carriage falls straight in the pile of flour sacks. The king angrily comes out of his carriage to punish the person behind it, but due to all the public, he dares not make a move. He simply walks towards John and asks for him to tell him the horse's price. John demands a very high price, which shocks the king, but he agrees to pay John the price. The king's advisor chimes in after the deal is done and whispers to the king to hire John to work in the palace. The king gets surprised by his suggestion, but the advisor states that if John works for them, they can easily take revenge on him for humiliating the king. The king agrees and offers the job to John. John, who is already a fool, is unable to see the king's deception and agrees. Afterwards, John starts working at the palace with great hard work, which again remains unsettling to the king's advisor, and he reports it to the king. He makes a suggestion to the king to appoint John for a task so difficult John will not be complete and they can successfully punish him. They decided to appoint John to catch a phoenix, a legendary firebird who has a lot of magical powers, but it was very difficult to catch a phoenix. The king happily agrees and tells his advisor that he can announce the death penalty to John if he is unable to get a fire phoenix. After they decide their plan, they appoint John for this mission in public so they can later announce his death penalty in case he fails. John, who is oblivious of the dangerous mission, quickly agrees and starts preparing for the mission. After Foal gets to know about John's decision, he panics and scolds John for agreeing. Foal quickly sees through the trick of the king and his men, but he knows John is a fool and was tricked easily, so he decides to help John. He guides John inside a magical forest and takes him to a special plant. He tells John that these nuts are the Firebird's favorite nuts and the Firebird will definitely come out to eat them. Foal also informs John that these nuts are like sleeping pills for the phoenix because as soon as the phoenix consumes them, it is going to fall deep asleep. John feels a bit bad about taking advantage of the bird's vulnerability to the nuts, but he has a mission to accomplish, so he gathers the nuts and follows Foal. Takes him to a specific place and tells John that the phoenix lives underground, so they are going to use these nuts as bait to lure it out. They put the nuts on the ground and quickly hide behind the bushes. After a few minutes, the ground shakes, and a phoenix in all its majesty comes out of the ground. Its beautiful feathers spread here and there as it flies towards the nuts. The bird happily munches on the nuts and falls on the ground unconscious. Foal and John silently celebrate that their plan has worked and they have the phoenix in their hand. They quietly sneak towards the phoenix to restrain its body, but suddenly the phoenix's eye bursts open and it's conscious again. Foal and John quickly panic and see the angry bird coming to their fire. The phoenix roars, and its feathers start glowing even more after it detects enemies around it. It flies towards John, who quickly runs inside the forest to save himself from the bird, but the bird follows it inside the thick forest. As John runs around, the fire starts to begin in the forest by the trees coming in contact with the phoenix's fire feathers. The whole forest catches on fire, and John is cornered by the bird. The phoenix slowly walks towards John to attack him, and John quickly tries to find something to defend himself with. Suddenly a last Firebird's nut is found by John inside his pocket, and he decides to try his luck with it. He throws the nut at the phoenix, and luckily his plan works. The phoenix sucks it down and eats it, but the next second, it falls asleep in a deep slumber. Finally, John and Foal let out their breath that had been stuck in their throats. The next dawn, when the phoenix wakes up, it realizes that its body has been trapped inside an iron trap. The bird wiggles around to free itself, but the tightly tied chain manages to keep it in its place. John looks at the bird and feels bad. After seeing the bird crying, John is no longer able to contain himself, as he is weak to animals crying. He decides to let this phoenix go. He quickly takes the chains off the bird and opens the cage enclosing the phoenix. The phoenix is finally able to stand up and feel free. It opens its arms and displays a majestic transformation of the bird. The bird flies off from there and bids goodbye to John. After the bird leaves, it leaves its glowing feather behind for John, who catches it and feels the feather's hotness. Foal helplessly looks at John since he knows John is too kind for his own good, and now the king is going to punish him. He tells John that he should not have done this because now the king can openly give punishment to him for not completing the mission. Hay returns to the palace empty-handed, which pleases the king, as this was his plan from the start, but he still shows his anger and demands John give him the bird. John tells the king about the phoenix and how he was able to capture it. The king refuses to believe him, and even the public starts mocking him. The king announces the death penalty to John, and he is brought to the platform to be publicly executed. The public watches in anticipation that John is about to be executed. Just as John is about to be executed, the fire phoenix arrives there, flying above the king's palace. With the presence of the phoenix, the feather starts to glow again, and the public finally realizes that John has been telling them the truth. They start cheering on John and the bird. The king has no other choice but to let go of John. He announces to cancel the execution of John and gives him a promotion in his rank. The king angrily grits his teeth as he is not able to take his revenge. He goes back inside the palace and angrily tells his ministers to come up with another plan to punish John. Outside the palace, Foal and Joe celebrate the promotion and survival of John. John begins to work again while the minister and the king come up with another plan to punish John. The king and his advisors have a hard time thinking of a plan that can make John fail successfully so the king can finish his revenge quickly. The monster finally suggests that they can appoint John to get and find a princess in the mountains and give him the mission to bring the princess back. The king thinks about the mission for a few minutes and wonders if John will be able to fail or not since the phoenix's mission was immensely dangerous and almost impossible, but John was able to pull it off. The minister starts to convince the king by telling him that this mission is for his own benefit as well. The king asks how this can benefit him, and the monster explains that if John manages to bring back the princess, then the king can marry the beautiful girl, and if John is not able to bring her back, they can easily punish him with a death sentence. Finally, all of them agree to send John to another magical world where John has to retrieve a mountain princess after going through a dangerous and life-threatening path. The king happily gives this task to John, But this time John is not willing to do this task because he senses the ulterior motives in the king's plan. After a lot of persuasion, John finally agrees and takes his magical map to find the princess. After getting to the ice mountain, John checks the map and finds out that the way inside the castle is the ice bridge in front of them. They cross the bridge, but another problem lies ahead of them. The door to the castle is a huge thick block of ice, and John starts to wonder how he is going to open the door. Just as John is looking at the door with confusion, the phoenix feather inside John's pocket flies out and enters the thick wall of ice. It takes a few moments for the ice door to completely melt away. The sudden change of ice block to water causes a huge water wave to hit John in full. Full falls down towards the mountain ice and starts rolling on it, turning into a huge ball of ice. John looks at his friend but deep down knows that Full is a magical creature, so it can save itself. After the door is opened, John walks inside and finds several girls sleeping on their hanging ice beds. He walks by all those beautiful girls and wonders who is the real princess since all the girls have mismatched beauty. John then notices that the phoenix feather is floating over a girl and pointing out the real princess for John. The real princess wakes up and angrily tries to push the feather away from her. After grumpily waking up, the beautiful princess mesmerizes John at her first glance. John is enthralled by the princess's beauty and tells her that the king of their country wants to marry the princess. The princess looks at John with a bored expression and asks him if the king wanted to marry her, and if he is so brave, then why did he send a puny worker of his to escort the princess? She refuses the marriage and tells John that she is not going to marry the king, as she thinks the king should have gotten here himself to save her. John keeps his mouth shut as he has no reply to the princess's demands. The princess lifts her gown and walks towards the open gate of the castle. She gets out and dives down towards the mountain where Full had originally fallen. John follows her out, and without a second thought, he dives in as well to save the princess. The princess is shocked to see such a brave and crazy man in front of her. Both of them are saved by Full, who transforms himself into the unicorn and carries the princess and John on his back. Full safely brings John and the princess to the ground, where John again asks the princess to come with him. She agrees, and night falls. They decide to go back to the kingdom the next day. The princess falls asleep on their camping site, and John stares at her with a loving gaze. All of this is noticed by Full, who tells John that he shouldn't fall for the princess because if the king finds out about this, he is going to kill John. John expresses that he is also developing feelings for the princess, but he doesn't dare to go against the king. All of this conversation is heard by the princess, who sneaks up on Full and John. She smiles secretly and goes back to sleep because she has also started to like John, and by hearing the conversation, she is sure that John also likes her. The next day, John brings the princess to the kingdom, and everyone agapes when they see such a beauty entering their kingdom. Whispers start surrounding the village as everyone wants to know about the princess's whereabouts. The king, who is watching all this through his telescope, gets enraged that John has returned back from this mission alive again, but his ministers start coaxing him that it is to the king's own benefit since he gets to marry such a beauty. After the princess is brought to the palace, John starts regretting his decision since he doesn't want to let the princess go so she can marry the king. The king looks at the beautiful princess and gets mesmerized. He quickly agrees to give John a promotion and tells the princess to rest in her chambers for the night. After John's promotion, he is promoted to a high-level rank, but even after getting to such a high rank, Jack feels restless. He doesn't want the princess to marry the king, so he sneaks to the princess's room and wants to tell her his feelings when the king's guards come and take the princess with them. John has no other choice but to directly confront the princess at the ball. Meanwhile at the ball, the king proposes to the princess and tells her to marry him. The princess smirks and tells the king that she is only going to marry on one condition. The king asks for the condition, and the princess states that she wants to have her grandmother's old ring, which was lost inside the ocean. She purposely asks the king to do this impossible task since she knows the king won't be able to complete it. The king starts to panic, as getting a ring back from the ocean is impossible. Just then John barges inside the ballroom to talk to the princess, but instead the king appoints him to this next task to find the princess's grandmother's ring. John is shocked because he knows such a mission is so hard to accomplish but agrees to the king. He returns back to Full and asks for his help, but this time Full has no idea how to help John, as he has no knowledge about the ring. Full asks his mother to help them, and she tells them that the ring is inside the stomach of a whale near the southern island shore. Full and John travel to the southern island, and due to them bumping into some birds, John falls inside the water. After falling into the sea, John notices that there are huge chains in the cabin, which makes him understand that they have found the whale. He asks Fowl about it, and Fowl tells him that the whole island in front of them is the whale. John feels bad after seeing the whale completely trapped inside the chains. He asks the whale why she is here, and she explains that she swallowed a few ships during her swim, which is why other merchants punished her to be trapped in these chains. John feels bad about her and decides to help her. He and Full decide to travel inside the whale's nose and tickle it so the whale sneezes out the ships it had swallowed. After getting free, the whale decides to return back to the deep sea. She goes back while John sees the retrieving figure in the water. He feels bad about not getting the ring, but a crab comes to John and gives him the ring, which is a gift from the whale, as the whale knew what John had secretly desired. John happily returns back to give the ring to the princess. At night he sneaks in her room with the help of Goal and notices that the king has trapped the phoenix on top of the palace building. This enrages John, who came to the princess to confess his feelings. She tells John about her feelings, but before they can communicate, the minister of the king notices Foal talking to John near the princess's tower. They get shocked and attack Foal by shooting him. Foal falls down injured while John is arrested for attempting to kidnap the princess. After John is captured, the princess meets Foal and tells him about her plan. She tells him that John is in huge danger since she purposely wanted to delay the marriage with the king and proposed an idea that she wants the king to dive into 3 cauldrons. One of the cauldrons will be filled with boiling water, the next one with freezing water, and the last one with boiling milk. She tells him that after she proposed it to the king, they made the plan to try this method on John first. She explains that this can kill John, but she can use her ring on the first cauldron, which is going to save John. She explains that the next cauldron can be dealt with the help of the phoenix feather, but the last cauldron needs to have a special flower in the depth of the mountains. She tells Foal that with the help of his speed he can retrieve the flower quickly. Despite being injured, Foal agrees and heads to get the flower. The next day, the king publicly brings out the cauldrons and pushes John into the first cauldron. At the same time, the princess throws her ring in the cauldron, which saves John's life. John falls in the freezing water, and the phoenix helps save John from the freezing after. After the second cauldron, John falls in the third one, which needs the flower. Meanwhile, after Foal gets to the flower, he gets to know that he is going to die if he picks this flower, but Foal plucks it to save John's life. Just as everyone thinks John is dead in the 3 sup RD/sup cauldron, the flower brought by Foal falls in the cauldron, and John emerges out of it in a king's getup. Everyone in the public starts cheering for John, and the king, who believes that the cauldron will grant him youth, jumps in the boiling water. The next second he is trapped inside a water bubble and gets trapped inside it. The bubble then flies away, taking the evil king with him. The public cheers for John and selects him as their next king. John and the princess quickly runs to check on Foal, who believes that he is dying, but the princess tells him that the flower was only testing him and he has passed the test. The princess and John gets married and peace is restored back in the kingdom again. John become a kind leader with Foal becoming his advisor.